What do you see as some of the I think you mentioned one of the priorities, but what are a couple other priorities that you see that the Chatham County school system needs to tackle?
I would like to see a couple things. Better communications with the parents, better planning. I'll give you an example. I don't know what the plan is for opening schools in January. I haven't seen anything. I don't know how all that's coordinated. I don't know if the parents know or if they wanted to open schools in 2 weeks. What's the plan? Who does what? Who's responsible for what? And to me, that type of planning should already be done. It should be on the shelf. Now it can be modified, but it should also be communicated to all the players, the teachers, the parents, heck, even the community, the school bus drivers. Everybody has to know what their role is going to be in the timeline. So if a decision was made today to open on the 1st of November, what takes place between now and the 1st of November? And how do you ensure everything is clicking the way it should? And that's the type of planning that I would bring based on my experience, both in the military and in business. No business could run this way without having a contingency plan and knowing exactly what they plan to do if and when something happens. I'll give you another example. The 2020 school plan expires in December. So what takes place in January? When's that going to be updated? We have to get ahead of the curve and start planning. Now I understand the board doesn't plan everything. It usually goes to the superintendent. But the board certainly needs to provide the guidance that, and then review the plans and be part of that approval process before plans go final.
So then the question is, what do you see as the role of the school board? What do you see as your role on the school board? And again, it seems that you're saying, hey, we're not in there to administer it. We're there to provide leadership and vision. And it seems that you're not quite satisfied, or a lot of parents don't seem to be quite satisfied with the way things are being done at the moment.
But I think that's probably a good synopsis. I never like to be critical of people who are out there, because no one's on the school boards trying to do a bad job. I think everyone's there trying to do the best they can, but I think they attack the problem from different perspectives. My perspective is fairly wide. My kids went to schools in North Carolina, plus 5 or 6 other states and overseas. I've experienced a lot of different boards. My grandchildren are in Oklahoma. I have friends in Fayetteville whose kids are going to school today with no problem. I saw your article about Thales Academy and what they're doing. I don't understand when we have a school board meeting that lasts 3 to 5 hours, why isn't the homework done ahead of time? And we come in and we make a decision with limited discussion time. Or if we're bringing experts in to talk about pros and cons of a particular course of action, such as COVID-19 experts, do we not also bring in experts who might understand the impact on the emotional well-being, the cognitive well-being, and the other elements of education that would affect the students, so that we get a more balanced picture, so we can make a more informed decision as to what are the risks. There's more risk than just COVID out there when your kids aren't going to school and aren't learning properly. And I don't see that. And those are the things that I would try to bring from a wider perspective based on my experience.
Now, in the NAACP candidates forum, you had brought up communicating to parents, putting a plan in place, and then one of the things you mentioned was once you get a plan going, you have to monitor it. What do you mean by monitoring it, or keeping a viewpoint of what's going on with the plan and making adjustments if necessary?
Oh, absolutely. You have a plan, and when you make a plan, you never have perfect information, so you make assumptions. Then as soon as you start to implement that plan, perhaps some of those assumptions don't pan out, or the situation changes based on what you assumed it was going to be. So you have to modify that plan. And part of that would be perhaps you think everything's working, but the parents come back and they bring up something you hadn't thought about. So you're always having to monitor your plan and then you're going to have to also make modifications to your plan as you go along and build that in to the plan itself, so that you just don't say, we have a plan, here it is, execute it, and don't bother me anymore. If you're not checking it, if you're not watching it, it will probably fail.
You mentioned mentoring. There was a survey a bunch of years ago where teachers in Chatham County were surveyed, and what they found is that some of the younger teachers coming into the school system didn't feel that they were getting enough guidance. Is that mentoring something that can also be done for teachers as well as students?
I think it can be. I'm trying to think how I might do that, because I know that even in industry, there are some people who have been in the job a long time that feel threatened by the younger people coming in. But I think that is something that the superintendent could certainly look at and come back to us with an idea and a plan as to whether or not it would work, and then if so, how. But I think it's worth looking into. I had not thought of that.
It's all right. Talking about school expansion and your planning, Chatham Park's coming in. Rumors are that there may be 7 additional schools coming into that area, maybe more, maybe less. Right now, Taylor's Academy is going in there. There's also rumors that a Catholic school may want to come in there, a charter school. There may be other options besides Chatham County Public Schools going into spaces in Chatham Park. What would you see in the leadership role within the school board as to how to address or how to proceed with getting Chatham County schools more active in what's going on in the expansion with Chatham Park?
I think that's a great idea, actually. I like competition. I would like to see plenty of people wanting to come in and increase the amount of schools here. But I think that it has to be done with a lot of consideration for the impact on the community at large. I do think that bringing in the Chatham Park folks and having them talk to the Board of Education on perhaps what their plans are, and doing that early on, would be very worthwhile. I also, from an economic development perspective, I know that I was working with the U.S. Space Force headquarters, trying to see if the Space Force headquarters asked North Carolina if they would like to recommend a location for their headquarters. And we had 2 cities in North Carolina recommend themselves. I'm working with them. I was pushing for Chatham Park. Pittsboro declined. I don't know why, but they declined. I thought that would have been perfect. That would have been the Department of Defense, the new U.S. Space Force headquarters, 1,400 people, buildings, plus all the families and all the support that would have come with it. One of the things they look at, though, and anytime the federal government is looking at establishing a place, is the education system. And they do a complete assessment of the education system, because they want to make sure that if they bring families here, that the families and the children will have a good education, and that's primarily K through 12.
All right, you threw a curve at me there. U.S. Space Force, for folks who may not be familiar with what exactly the U.S. Space Force is, can you fill them in on that?
Okay. Sorry for throwing you the curve.
That's all right.
You know, the U.S. Space Force is the newest branch of the military. It was just established. And the U.S. Space Force will be commanded by a 4-star general who is now looking for a place to put its headquarters, its command and control headquarters. Now, they're not going to be launching, satellites or anything from here, but this is the command and control headquarters for the Space Force as it grows out. And when I looked at the technology that's available with our universities and even our STEM graduates in high school, I thought, wow, this would be a great place. And then I looked at what's happening at Chatham Park, and I thought that it would have been a great place. I could have come in and basically occupied part of it and built it completely out, more so than we're seeing now. But the Space Force, wherever it decides to go, is going to bring a lot of people in industry with them.